following the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun in November 1922. This month we celebrate 101 years since the unearthing of one of the world's most infamous and enigmatic monarchs. With this in mind, we'll take a close look at 3 of his most important portraits and dare to construct a truthful set of reconstructions of this ancient African king, taking us from his youth to his death in early adulthood. Resurrecting the Head of Nephin. The Head of Nephin depicts the bust of a young Tutankhamen emerging from a lotus flower. It's a small artwork of the young king framed in the image of the Memphite deity Nephin. The bust measures just 12 inches and is made entirely out of wood. It is widely accepted that the bust is deliberately painted red, but much like a majority of Kemetic artifacts, it is apparent that the red stucco forms the undercoat and the darker, more naturalistic medium brown paint shown here that forms the outer layer is simply ignored. The prominence of this faded red skin tone has also been exaggerated by the recent restoration of the deep blue-black eyeliner and eyebrow paint, which makes the obviously faded and damaged top coat appear as the target color when it is not. This profile view of the bust shows the brown top coat clearly. It also shows the king's peculiar head shape, which interestingly has a very logical explanation in trichology, but we'll leave that for a later video. Using available images of the bust as references, I restored the surface and tones and texture using cloning. The result was this far more naturalistic and authentically toned bust. It is also most consistent with the numerous busts, statues and schwabtis of the boy king. Consistency is a key theme in Kemetic art. Having this view of the bust available, I was able to create a lifelike reconstruction of what the boy king may have looked like when this bust was created. This view of the boy king is unique because out of all of his busts, this is the only bust that depicts him at such a youthful age. From the reconstruction, I would approximate the age of Tutankhamen to be around 9 years old when the artwork was constructed. Another iconic bust that gives us a very lifelike glimpse into the face of this Amarna ruler is the wooden mannequin. It is a life-sized model of the king, depicting him from the waist up wearing a white linen tunic and a yellow flat-topped crown. The crown type is unknown, but in shape and form it appears to resemble the isocholo flat-topped hats worn by the Zulu peoples of southern Africa. The god Amun is often depicted wearing a similar headdress. However, lacking the divine plumes and beard, this mannequin appears to play a more functional role, as opposed to an ontological or religious one. The mannequin is painted a deep brown red, as typical of most Kemetic art. Interestingly, a reddening has been added to the eyeballs, a detail that effectively conveys the presence of sclera, a natural reddening of the eyes that occurs amongst domestic Africans as a result of the presence of substantial melanation. Creating the reconstruction required almost entirely no fabrication, apart from the size of the eyes and pupils that did require some altering for realism to be achieved. His face is notably plumper in this portrait, a detail that I'd struggled to capture in earlier renditions, but seemingly I was able to render this successfully on this occasion. A reassuring factor was, in spite of the differences, there was clear continuity between the portraits, and thus the reconstructions also resembled one another. The age of the reconstruction appears to be around 12 to 14 years old. And that brings us to our final artwork, and in all likelihood, the final portrait based on Tutankhamun's real face, and possibly the most priceless historical artwork ever unearthed, Tutankhamun's golden death mask. On that note, reading about the extraction of the golden mask can be difficult, not because the subject matter is troublesome to comprehend, but conversely, in learning about the amount of disrespect and disregard this African monarch was treated with, a trend that Egyptologists have recklessly continued since they begun excavating Kemet. One cannot help but feel increasing levels of disdain and indignation towards Egyptology Howard Carter and his group of bandits. Without going into too much detail, their effort to dislodge the golden mask involved dismemberment, hot knives, and suspending of the king's body in mid-air. It seems the colonists treat the African dead with the same punctuated contempt as they treat the African living. Rant over. The golden mask itself is crafted from Nubian gold, Afghan lapis lazuli, and Ethiopian obsidian. It was originally formed for another monarch, most likely Neferwaten, but later completely adapted for King Tutankhamen. However, the mask was definitely fully customized to match the visage of the king, since it has almost perfect continuity with the hundreds of portraits depicting the king. His trademark nose, lips, full face, and nilotic prognathism are all present to the same degree they are pictured in his other artworks. Once again, the sclera in the eyes has been detailed by the artist, but this time a much more pronounced and deep reddening has been used, perhaps matching his increasingly visible melanin in later life. This detail is reflected in the deepening of tones seen in his later artwork. This is also typical in the African continent, where it's normal for people to be noticeably darker in adulthood than they were in youth. This final reconstruction, I believe, is a good approximation of the likeness of Tutankhamen in his last days. The age of the reconstruction appears around 17 to 20 years old. Thank you for joining me on The King's Monologue, a place where we are undeterred in our pursuit for historical truth. With the generosity of my community, I'm able to produce these research documentaries with greater frequency, so do consider supporting me on Patreon or by purchasing merchandise. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and browse the channel to enjoy more of my research. Comment to let me know what you think of